Have you ever been discarded after a lifetime of dedication? Boss fired me after 17 years, I uncovered a massive scam that no one saw coming. But the truth I found? It could cost me everything. You won't believe what happened next. I used to think it was something that happened to other people, those who didn't work hard enough, those who couldn't adapt to the fast-paced world we live in. But now, as I sit here looking at my old desk, my hands are shaking just slightly. It's as if my body still can't quite believe what's happened. A lifetime of loyalty, and in the blink of an eye, I'm nothing more than a forgotten memory. I'm David Carter, 54 years old, and for the last 17 years, I've been the backbone of Meridian Technologies' IT department. From the days when our office was just 2 small floors in an industrial park, to now, where we occupy the entire building, I've been there, every step of the way. I watched it grow, I helped it grow, but most importantly, I kept it running smoothly. When the company upgraded its systems, I was there. When they shifted to cloud services, I made it happen. Every new hire in IT, well, they learned from me. I worked weekends, holidays, I gave up countless personal moments because I believed in what we were building. I believed in the company. But now, it's different. Now, the company doesn't need me anymore. I look at the desk where I spent so many years, the desk that's now littered with the remnants of my old life here, family photos, a coffee mug, the little cactus my daughter gave me as a joke years ago, which somehow survived under the fluorescent lights. It feels like someone else's desk. My fingers hover over the keyboard as I remember what I was told this morning. David, Mark Bennett, my boss, said flatly, we're eliminating your position. Clean out your desk by the end of the day. No emotion, no apology, no recognition of the time I had put in. Just, a decision. I understood the words. I even understood the logic, in a cold, business sense. But hearing them from Mark, who barely knew the first thing about the systems I'd maintained for nearly 2 decades, stung more than I expected. It wasn't the shock of the firing. No, it was the realization that I'd given so much, and for what? To be tossed aside like outdated software. I get up, walking slowly around the office. My colleagues, some of them coders I'd trained myself, try to look busy. They glance up, see me standing there, and then quickly look back down at their screens. I don't blame them. Most of them have no idea what's really running beneath the surface. They couldn't navigate the systems I built from the ground up, or understand the layers of custom software that hold everything together. For them, I was just the guy in the background, keeping the machines running, always reliable, never asking for much in return. But now, it's over. As I gather my things, I feel a strange emptiness. Not anger. Not sadness. Just, quiet acknowledgement. I walk out of the building, without looking back. The security badge that had been renewed 16 times is now useless. I'm no longer a part of this place. And yet, something inside me stirs. I know something they don't. Something that could change everything. Tomorrow might be a very interesting day. The next morning, I sat at my desk, surrounded by the quiet hum of the office, yet it felt as though everything around me was beginning to blur. The usual bustle was absent. I wasn't surprised when Mark Bennett called me into his office that morning, in fact, I had been expecting it. The air had been thick with something for the past week, a feeling that today would be the day. And sure enough, it was. David, Mark said, his voice flat, emotionless, we've decided to eliminate your position. You need to clean out your desk and leave by the end of the day. I looked at him, then at Vanessa from HR, who was sitting quietly beside him. Neither of them made eye contact. I could tell they were just doing their job. This was business. Their business, their decision. It wasn't like the times I'd imagined being fired before. This time, it felt different. There was a numbness, a hollow ache in my chest, as I realized that after all these years, all these late nights, all the times I'd worked through holidays and weekends, none of it was enough. They didn't need me anymore. They didn't need the person who'd built the very systems they relied on every day. I didn't respond immediately. There was no anger, no outburst. Just silence. A silence so deep it felt like it could swallow me whole. I stood up, gathering my personal items, family photos, the coffee mug my daughter had made, and the little cactus that somehow survived under the fluorescent lights. None of it could replace the years I'd spent here. None of it could fill the emptiness that began to creep in. I looked around the office one last time. It was hard to describe the feeling. The emptiness, the loneliness of it all. I had spent a significant part of my life here, working alongside people I thought were teammates, people I thought would understand the effort I'd put into making this company what it is. But now, I was just another discarded piece of furniture. Gone, as easily as flipping a switch. There were no goodbyes, no handshake. No thanks for everything I had done. Just the business decision, the cold, uncaring reality that I no longer mattered. I walked out of the office without looking back. The heavy door closed behind me, and I felt a strange sense of finality. I had been here, in this very building, for so many years, yet now, it felt like I had never truly belonged. It was over. But as I walked through the parking lot, I felt something else stirring in me, something cold and calculating, but not bitter. It was a strange sense of knowing that this wasn't the end for me. Not yet. Not by a long shot. Tomorrow was going to be interesting. The first few days after I left Meridian were strange. The rush of emotions from the firing had faded, replaced by a quiet determination. I didn't feel anger, not yet anyway. Instead, I felt something else. Something colder, sharper. I knew I needed to focus, to take a step back and observe. I wasn't going to make any rash decisions. Not yet. I spent the first few days at home, away from the world of meetings and office politics. I tried to clear my mind, but the truth was, I couldn't stop thinking about the years I had poured into that company. The loyalty, the countless hours spent working in the background, unseen by most. And now, nothing. It felt like I had been nothing more than a tool, useful when needed, but discarded once I had outlived my purpose. But as much as I wanted to push it all aside, something inside me wouldn't let go. I knew there was more to the story. The firing, the suddenness of it, felt like it had been planned for a while. I just couldn't shake the feeling that I was part of something bigger than just a routine corporate decision. So, I began to watch. I started looking into the company's financials. After all, I had been responsible for maintaining the infrastructure at Meridian, which meant I still had access to some of the internal systems. It wasn't difficult to log in from home. I had set up backup protocols years ago, just in case something like this ever happened. Legal had signed off on it long ago, and no one had thought twice about it. I'd been methodically checking systems, reviewing records, when one thing caught my eye. A series of payments made to a company called Apex Solutions Group. At first, I didn't think much of it, vendors and consultants were a part of everyday business. But something about the name felt off. I decided to dig deeper. Each month, there were transfers to Apex, and not small ones, large payments. I traced the transactions. What raised my suspicion was the fact that these payments had been increasing month after month, with no clear explanation. The amounts were growing steadily, but the services rendered by Apex were vague at best. No clear documentation, no real projects tied to them. I cross-referenced the dates with major company updates. Nothing seemed to add up. The payments to Apex didn't align with anything I knew about Meridian's operations. I pulled up the business registration for Apex Solutions Group. It was a small, registered entity with a post office box address, listed as a consulting firm. But when I looked closer, I saw the ownership details. The name of the registered owner made my blood run cold. It was Thomas Wilcox, the CFO's brother-in-law. I sat back in my chair, letting the weight of the discovery sink in. It wasn't just a few odd payments or a vendor trying to overcharge. This was something more. It was a scam. A well-organized, hidden fraud, siphoning money from the company in plain sight. I hadn't been just fired, I had been thrown out to make way for something far more sinister. They thought I wouldn't notice, thought they could hide it from someone like me. But I had always been thorough, and now that same thoroughness was about to expose everything. I smiled grimly to myself. It was time to turn the tables. This wasn't just about getting even anymore. This was about exposing the truth. It was late, well past midnight. The house was quiet, and the only sound was the soft hum of my laptop. I had been sitting at my desk for hours, piecing together more and more evidence of the financial irregularities at Meridian. The deeper I dug, the clearer it became that the fraud I'd uncovered was only the tip of the iceberg. But as I was reviewing the latest documents, something caught my eye, a new email notification on my screen. I clicked on the message, expecting another automated update or junk mail, but what appeared on the screen stopped me cold. The email was simple, its subject line empty, and the message itself was just a single line. "We know you're looking for the truth. Don't let them find out you know." I froze. My heart skipped a beat. Who was this? The email address was unfamiliar, the sender name anonymous. I didn't recognize it. But the message, there was something unnerving about it. It wasn't just a warning. It was a direct message, aimed at me. How did they know what I was doing? How did they know I was digging into the financials? I leaned back in my chair, trying to steady my breathing. My mind raced. Was someone watching me? Had I become the target of something much bigger than just a corporate conspiracy? The idea of being followed, of someone knowing exactly what I was up to, made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than just a random email. It was a warning. And I wasn't sure whether I was being threatened or invited to uncover something far darker than I had anticipated. Either way, the game had just changed. And I had no idea who was playing with me now. The email was like a spark, igniting something inside me. The feeling of being watched, of being one step behind, lit a fire I hadn't known was there. For the first time, I wasn't just a victim of betrayal, I was the one controlling the game. I wasn't going to rush into anything out of anger or desperation. No, this time, I was going to play it smart. I spent the next few days quietly strategizing. The fire of my anger had cooled, replaced by a calm, calculated resolve. I wasn't just going to expose a few shady transactions, I was going to uncover the full scope of the fraud. I started by going back through the records I had quietly kept over the years, copies of internal emails, reports, financial statements, and logs of my access to the company's sensitive data. I had always been meticulous, documenting everything for security purposes, never imagining it would one day serve as the key to my retaliation. As I sifted through the documents, one thing stood out, a series of recurring payments to Apex Solutions Group. But this time, I wasn't just looking at individual payments, I was seeing a pattern. Each payment was tied to key dates in the company's financial dealings, times when large contracts were up for renewal or new software licenses were issued. These weren't just routine transactions, they were carefully timed and deliberately inflated. I dug deeper into the records and discovered more. Payments to Apex were funneled through various departments, and they were all signed off by the same people. People I knew well. James Anderson, the CFO, was at the center of it all. His signature was on every approval form. And then, there were others, higher-ups in the company, people who had been too involved in the day-to-day operations to miss the rising tide of financial mismanagement. They had been part of it, playing their parts and covering their tracks. I wasn't just uncovering a few bad apples, I was seeing the blueprint of a large-scale embezzlement scheme, one that had been running right under everyone's nose for years. The more I uncovered, the more I realized how deep it went. It wasn't just about money, it was about power, control, and manipulation of the system that was supposed to keep everything in check. But this was only the beginning. I had the evidence now, the smoking gun. The question wasn't just what I was going to do with it, but who I could trust to help me expose it. I needed to be careful. Whoever was behind this, they were watching. And I wasn't going to let them take me down without a fight. The plan was forming in my mind, and this time, I wasn't going to just walk away. I was going to make sure the truth came to light, no matter what it took. The weight of the evidence I had gathered sat heavy on my shoulders, but it also fueled me. I wasn't going to just sit by and watch these people get away with it. I had the power to expose them now, to show the world what had been happening under the surface of Meridian Technologies. But I also knew this was a dangerous game. Once I hit send, there would be no turning back. The risk was immense. I could lose everything, again. But something inside me snapped. I wasn't going to let them silence me. Not after all I had sacrificed for them. Not after everything I had learned. The betrayal stung deeply, but it also made me stronger. I spent the better part of the next day crafting the report. It wasn't just a simple email, this was a detailed, meticulous breakdown of every transaction, every signature, every hint of corruption. I included timestamps, email exchanges, and cross-referenced the financial records with everything I had documented over the years. The evidence wasn't just damning, it was irrefutable. With trembling hands, I attached the report and typed out a short, pointed message. Subject: Urgent, Financial Irregularities and Fraud Investigation. To the Board of Directors. I trust this email finds you well. Attached you will find a detailed report regarding significant financial irregularities within Meridian Technologies. I urge you to review the findings immediately. The details include fraudulent payments, undisclosed conflicts of interest, and serious misconduct involving key members of the leadership team. This is not something to be taken lightly, and I trust you will act swiftly and with due diligence. Regards. David Carter. I clicked send, and immediately, a rush of adrenaline coursed through my veins. It was done. The message was out there. Now, all I could do was wait. And hope. But the response came faster than I expected. Within hours, I received a call from an unknown number, Vanessa from HR. Her voice was calm, too calm, almost rehearsed. Mr. Carter, she began, we've received your email. We need to remind you that any communications regarding company matters are a violation of your separation agreement. We urge you to cease all further contact. Legal action will be taken if you persist. I could almost hear her smile through the phone. They were trying to intimidate me, to silence me. But I wasn't afraid. I had anticipated this. I leaned back in my chair, feeling a sense of cold satisfaction. They were trying to shut me down with threats of lawsuits and legal action. But they didn't know what I had in my back pocket. The report I sent wasn't the only thing I had. I had backups of everything, secure, untouchable. If they tried to bury this, it would spread like wildfire. I wasn't about to let them win. The email had been the first step. Now, I needed to sit tight and let them react. This was the point of no return. If they tried to threaten me, they would only dig themselves deeper. I was ready for whatever came next. The stakes were high, but so was my resolve. I knew one thing for sure, this was just the beginning of their downfall. A few days had passed since I sent the report to the board, and the silence was almost deafening. I had expected some kind of response by now, but it wasn't the company's legal threats that I was dealing with. It was something far more insidious. A new layer of the conspiracy was emerging, and I was starting to feel like I was being dragged deeper into a web I couldn't escape from. Then came the call. Ethan Harris. A former colleague, one of the people I had mentored over the years. He was one of the few I still kept in touch with after my departure. When he reached out, I thought it was just a friendly check-in, a chance to see how things were going for me since I left. But when we met up, I saw something in his eyes, something that didn't sit right. We sat across from each other in a quiet cafe, my laptop open between us. I showed him some of the files I had uncovered, the same ones that had led me to Apex Solutions and the fraud I had been chasing. As I explained what I had found, Ethan's expression remained neutral, almost too neutral. I looked at him carefully. "Did you know about these transactions, Ethan?" I asked, my voice steady but my insides churning. For a moment, there was only silence. Then Ethan sighed and leaned back in his chair, his eyes never leaving mine. "Yeah, I knew," he said, his tone unflinching. "I was part of it." I felt the world tilt. Ethan, my protégé, my friend, the one I thought I could trust, was involved. He wasn't just a bystander, he had been orchestrating the whole thing. The emails, the transactions, the cover-ups, it had all been him. He continued, explaining how he'd been working with James Anderson and others for months, using his position to manipulate the books. And worse, he had been the one who sent me that email, the one that had set me on this path. "I thought you'd never catch on," Ethan admitted, his voice calm. "But you did. I didn't think you would. But you always were thorough." The betrayal hit harder than anything I had felt so far. Ethan hadn't just been a part of this, he had been behind it all along. I sat there in stunned silence as Ethan's words sank in. The betrayal felt like a physical blow, but I couldn't afford to dwell on it. The pieces were falling into place, but the truth was even darker than I had imagined. Ethan wasn't just an accomplice in this massive scheme, he had been the mastermind, the puppet master pulling the strings from the shadows. As he spoke, his words painted a picture I wasn't ready to see. Ethan had manipulated the entire system from the inside, using his position to influence key decisions. He had carefully planted the seeds of the fraud, subtly convincing people to approve the inflated payments, to look the other way when red flags appeared. But it didn't stop there. He had been watching me all along, using my trust to steer me in the right direction, knowing I would eventually dig deeper. He was the one who had sent me the cryptic email, the one that pushed me to keep looking. He had known I would find the discrepancies, but he never thought I'd uncover the full extent of the conspiracy. He thought I would stop at the surface, satisfied with uncovering a few payments, but I hadn't. I had dug deeper, and that had exposed him. "Why, Ethan?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, though inside, I was screaming. "Why do all of this?" He shrugged, a cold, almost detached expression on his face. "Money. Power. You know the drill, David. You were always the steady one, always doing the right thing. But me? I'm a lot more flexible when it comes to doing what's necessary to get ahead." The realization hit me like a freight train. Ethan had been manipulating everyone, including me. He had used our friendship, my trust, to further his own agenda. He had kept me in the dark, feeding me just enough information to keep me hooked, to make sure I kept digging, but not enough to uncover the full truth. All this time, I had been chasing a trail he had carefully set for me. And now, with everything exposed, he thought he was still in control. I felt the anger rise in me, but I squashed it down. There was no time for that now. I couldn't let him distract me from what I needed to do. The wheels were already in motion, and I had to act fast. I had the evidence now, not just of the fraud, but of Ethan's involvement in it all. I knew what I had to do next. This wasn't just about uncovering a financial scam anymore. It was about taking down the entire operation. I had to expose Ethan and the others involved, and I had to do it in a way they couldn't deny or bury. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to focus. The pieces of the puzzle were all there now. All I had to do was put them in the right hands. Turning to Ethan, I said with cold resolve, "You've made a huge mistake. And now, I'm going to make sure the truth gets out." His expression faltered for just a second, but he quickly regained his composure. He had no idea what was coming next. But I did. And this time, I wasn't going to be the one left behind. The board meeting was unlike any other I had ever witnessed at Meridian. There was a palpable tension in the air as the members sifted through the evidence I had provided: proof of fraud, manipulation, and the deceit that had been allowed to fester in the shadows for far too long. My report had laid everything bare. The connections between the payments to Apex Solutions Group, the involvement of James Anderson, and Ethan Harris's covert role were all there, undeniable and damning. It was a calculated move on my part, giving them no room to escape or dismiss the truth. By the time the meeting concluded, the damage was irreversible. Several executives, including James and Ethan, were removed from their positions immediately. The board had no choice but to acknowledge the depth of the corruption, and the magnitude of their failure to properly oversee their own operations. The decision was swift but necessary. As I sat in the back of the room, watching the members discuss the future of the company, I felt a strange sense of clarity. It wasn't about revenge anymore. This wasn't about proving a point or getting even, it was about protecting the integrity of a company that I had helped build. Then came the moment I had never expected. A member of the board, Robert Chen, turned to me with a proposal that caught me completely off guard. "David," he said, his voice steady but respectful, "given the gravity of what you've uncovered, we'd like to offer you a new role, a position of Chief Information Security Officer. We believe your expertise, your thoroughness, and your loyalty will be vital to ensuring that something like this never happens again." I blinked in surprise. It was an offer I hadn't anticipated, but one I couldn't turn down. The weight of responsibility that came with the role was heavy, but it also felt like the right path. It wasn't just about being in charge. It was about making sure no one would ever have to go through what I had gone through, that the company's systems would be secure, and its leadership held accountable. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of changes. I returned to Meridian, but not as the employee they had once dismissed. I was now an executive, responsible for ensuring the company's future. As I walked through the halls I had known so well, there was a new sense of respect both from the employees and from myself. I wasn't just part of the system anymore. I was shaping it. What mattered most was not the power or the position. It was knowing that I had made a difference. The company was on the path to healing, to becoming a stronger, more transparent organization. And that, in the end, was the real victory. As I sat at my new desk, looking out at the city skyline, I couldn't help but reflect on the lessons I had learned. I had been discarded, left behind, but in the end, I had returned stronger than before. The message I took from all this, and what I hoped others would understand, is that sometimes, the ones who seem unimportant are the ones who can change everything. We may work in the shadows, unnoticed, but when the time comes, we have the power to shift the balance and make a lasting impact. Never underestimate those who seem insignificant, I thought, a quiet smile tugging at the corner of my lips. They may be the ones who change everything, quietly but powerfully.